Well, it's my pleasure to sit here this morning with Dr. Janette Hoston Harris, a lady who many may not know, but when you read her accolades and the journey, and I like to say her choosing to live in purpose and own purpose, you're like, wow, I too should do more. Dr. Harris, it's a pleasure, number one, for you to sit down with us. But I want to get started, because of our time, I want to get started right into some of the things that you've experienced through your life. You know, you are known, I guess, we're first known for the sit-in at the Kress building, 5 and dime store. I mean, what can you get with 5 cents and 10 cents now?
Right, nothing.
You know, but you were first known for that. But talk about how, even before that happened, other things in your life in Monroe, Louisiana prepared you for that purpose.
Yeah, growing up, I enjoyed my life in Monroe because I had a good family, a very good church family, and a community, tight-knit community. But I was surrounded by segregation and racism.
Yeah.
And my dad would never let us work for any white business. He said because he didn't want us to experience what he had experienced, because he was a businessman. So there were no libraries, there were no recreation centers, there were no swimming pools, there were no parks that we could go to. So most of our activities centered around the church.
Yeah.
And so I just remember the very first library that my daddy helped establish, which was behind his shoe store. I remember him being an integral part of the first swimming pool that opened up on Renwick Street. And of course, each time he opens up, so I wasn't involved with the library, but everything else I was involved in. When he opened the first swimming pool, Carl Robinson and I had to work. Carl Robinson's daddy was involved. Okay. So the two of us had to, you remember Dr. Carl Robinson?
Yes, I remember him.
Yes, we were raised up together in the same street.
Okay.
Carl and I worked the swimming pool, you know. We sold everything that was in it. We took care of all of that. And my brother was a lifeguard. So it was kind of a family affair.
It was a family business, another family affair, rather.
Yeah, so that was giving us an outlet, because before we just had to go down to one little Pierce's drugstore on Sundays and meet and talk. But we didn't have very much social life. We were culturally and socially challenged by the system.
Yeah.
And so that was, that was unfortunate. But we thrived in part, in spite of it. But I used to hate the fact that my mother was very light-skinned. She could go in the store and try on anything. Nobody ever bothered her.
Wow.
But she would not do it. But I couldn't go in with her and try on anything.
Talk about that dichotomy of being in 1950s America, light-skinned mother, I would assume a darker-skinned dad.
Yeah,
and
very dark-skinned dad and brown-skinned children.
You know, you're brown-skinned children. You're the combo of the two.
Right.
Just talk about that and how that, from I won't say a psychological standpoint, but it probably did.
It did, but I probably did not understand the psychological impact there.
Okay.
Okay? I just knew that if she wanted to, she could do any of those things, and I could not.
Wow.
But she always refused to do them.
Okay.
And so, even going to some restaurant, she could go in. They wouldn't know her from any white person.
Right.
But she just would not ever go in, because she said she didn't want to subject us to that kind of treatment.
Okay.
Only because she was light-skinned,
Right.
And so she didn't revel in being light-skinned. She just hated the fact that how we were all treated.
Yes.
And so that happened a lot in the South, because the South has all flavors of people and colors.
I heard someone said recently, and as a historian, Dr. Harris, if you would, just comment on this, and we're going to continue down the chronological journey. He said he truly believed that there's only one race, we all just have different culture. And that's how you frame it. There's the human race.
That's it. It's the human race. And because we preceded some other people.
Right.
That caused people to think of us as second-class citizenship because we were darker skinned.
Right.
And we came from Africa. But when they gave us a chance and we out-learned them without going to school, they didn't want to realize how smart we really were.
Yes.
You know. And I think that, and fast forward, they still thought this throughout the years.
Right.
I think it changed some of their views when Barack Obama became president. And they really saw on the real stage how smart we are.
Yes.
How smart we really are. And because he was a microcosm of all of us.
Right.
And that really caused them to revel in the president you have now.
You know, you go back to President Obama's, but let's back up to you as even before that. I mean, well, not before that. I want to go back to you being a young lady helping African Americans study the preamble for that. If you would, share that story.
Yes. Before 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, which struck down separate but equal, and also paved the way for and it was a violation of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. And so it paved the way for the Civil Rights Movement, but prior to 1954, blacks could not vote in my hometown, couldn't register. First you had to register, then you had to vote.
Right.
Two processes. So in order to be able to register, to put your name on the list to vote, you had to be able to recite the preamble to the Constitution, which was a literacy test. And many cities throughout Louisiana had literacy tests.
Yes.
And Mississippi.
Throughout the South.
Throughout the South, we had a literacy test. Ours just happened to be the preamble to the Constitution, which was 53 words.
Okay.
And so, for a person with little or no education, that was a lot to memorize. So my daddy said to me, you have to teach people the preamble to the Constitution.
And how young were you at this time?
I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
So I had to learn it myself because I didn't know it, didn't want to know it. And so I had to learn it myself. And so once I learned it, then my job was to teach. The first person I taught was my grandmother.
Okay.
And so she learned it, she rehearsed it, and she knew it. Because back in the day, black people wanted to vote. They wanted to say what they felt about the system. And so you didn't have them sitting home sleeping when you were voting. They were out there at those polls. And so she learned the preamble to the Constitution, she knew it. But once you go down to a courthouse, and here's this big burly white man standing there with guns on his side at a billy club, and him looking at you saying, what do you want? It kind of shattered her nerves. And so she missed one word and had to go back the next day and do it all over again, but she passed it. But that's what black people had to go through, just to put their name on the roll. And that wasn't voting.
Yeah.
Voting was a different process. You found out where your poll was and you went and voted, or they moved your poll and you didn't know it, and you had to go somewhere else. I mean, they took us through all of that to keep us from voting.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important for us to vote. But that was one of the things that angered me coming up. The other thing that angered me is that going to the movie theater, I had to walk up 4 flights of steps up to the nosebleed section.
Well, so that's beyond a balcony there.
That's below your balcony.
That's beyond a balcony.
That's the nosebleed section. I had to go up to the nosebleed section in order to see the movie, and everybody else is sitting downstairs.
And you paid the same price.
Paid the same price. The other thing that angered me a lot is going to these little carryouts and ordering your food, paying for it, but have to go to the side door, the back door, and pick it up.
Yeah.
See, all those things are part of our growing up and detesting the system. You know, there were so many things.
Well,
I mean, that's just a few of the things.
Also, I had to believe, and it's not as overt today, but it's a conditioning of the mind to say that
right.
you are second class.
That's right. You're second class.
You're beneath.
Yes, and my dad always taught me, you're never second class.
Yes.
You're never. But I don't care what they tell you. I remember, because he would let me work for whites, my neighbor was a farmer. Mm-hmm. And so my neighbor picked up cotton pickers in his bus and took them to the field. And he said to my daddy one day that I don't have nobody who could count the money. He said, but he called me Janie. He didn't call me Janette. He called me Janie. I don't know why. But Mr. Collins called me Janie. And he said, but Janie can count. Because see, I worked in my daddy's shoe store.
Right.
And I handled his cash register. So I knew how to count money early on. And my daddy said to me, I got a job for you. I said, what kind of job? You gonna work for Mr. Collins? I said, Mr. Collins don't have no job. He takes some people to the field. He said, yeah, you gonna ride with him. I said, oh my God, no, I'm not. He said, yes, you are. Then you didn't ask.
Right.
I told you. I said, Mr. Collins leave out here at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning.
At dark 30, as they say.
At dark 30, he said, well, you need, when Mr. Collins pick up all his cotton pickers, he's gonna come by and pick you up. It'll be about 4:30. I said, you kidding me? And he's gonna take you to the field. You don't have to work, just keep track of what they eat on the bus. And they didn't pay but $3 or $4 for 100 pounds of cotton.
Right.
So they had to deduct that little money from what the crackers and the stuff they ate on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
I had to deduct that from how much they're gonna get paid. So some people go on with $1, $2. It was just sad.
When you say that, and I don't think a lot of people can put that in perspective. Put that in today's term, someone making $1,000 a week, say for instance, and they had to pay expenses to go to work,
Right.
and come home with maybe $200 or $300 out of that 1,000.
Right.
That's kind of what that's equivalent to, if
Right.
you would.
Right. That's what that's equivalent to.
Yeah.
And so I went to the cotton field with him every morning. I slept the whole morning, but I hated it because once you got like. They go early because the dew is on the cotton and it's heavy,
Yeah.
so it weighs more.
Right.
So they get more bang for their buck early in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock before the sun comes up, sometimes 5:30. And so you had 50 people on the bus, so I had to keep track of everybody's weight, and they weigh 3 times a day.
Yes.
So I had to compute all those weights on the bus. There was no computers, there was no calculators, that was just a pen and paper, okay? And then I had to deduct whatever they ate during the day out of what they paid. Then I had to go with him to the big house where this man who owned the field, gave him the cash box. So the first day I went, this man, the first time he saw me, and he called him Louis, Mr. Collins' name was Louis.
Okay.
He called him by the first name.
Right.
Louis, he said, who is this gal? And Mr. Collins said, she's gonna handle the money. He said, can she count? And me being so flippant, I said, I can count as well as you can, sir. And he said, Louis, she got a bad mouth here.
Wow.
And he said, so he gave me the cash box. I said, how much are you giving me? And he said, $100, whatever it is. So I count the money.
Right.
And he said, you don't have to count the money, gal. You don't have to count my money. I said, yes, I do. So we won't run short. He said, Louis, what the hell is she saying? I can't count. He was mad. And Mr. Collins said, oh, Janie, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. I said, I don't care about him, but I realized that's his livelihood, so I didn't say nothing.
Right.
So I did count the money to make sure it was all there.
Make sure he wasn't shorting you, because it would have been on you then.
So I got back into the bus.
Yeah.
And with the cash register. And so I paid off people. And I did that. I don't know how long I did it, maybe 2 weeks. I couldn't stand it no longer.
Yeah.
I told my dad, this is just crazy. So, but that was my job. My other job was, my people love to fish.
Uh-huh.
And so my job was I made this my job. I would go out in the morning, since I learned how to go out early in the morning. I would go out in the morning in the ditches or the trenches and catch crickets. And put wet bread in a cage, a little cage I had, and put the crickets in there. And I would sell the crickets to the fishermen for 2 cents a piece. And then I started doing worms, those big earthworms.
Yes.
And I sold them for about 3 or 4 cents a piece.
Wow.
So that's how I had my little I called it my side hustle. And my brother looked at me and he said, I'm not gonna do none of that stuff. I'm not getting up that time of morning. He didn't do none of that. But I always made money in some kind of way. My daddy being a businessman, he kind of trained me in that way to make money, make little money.
It's real interesting, and I say this all the time, and we have a challenge now as a race. More is caught than taught.
Yes.
Your
Yes.
dad was throwing a lot at you,
Yes.
and not necessarily formally teaching you,
Right.
but you were catching and learning these life lessons.
Yes. And I've been able to throw that to my children, who are both business people.
Okay.
And my granddaughter, I've thrown it to her, and so she likes to make money. She learned how to do hair on her own in high school. and she made money doing hair. And she probably didn't realize that it was being around me in my office at home and us talking about business and all
Right.
that kind of caught the bug.
Yes, I think that's really what it is.
Yeah.
You know, as we move forward a little bit to you and Southern University, you know, talk about your initial days at Southern University, and then we'll move to the.
Well, when I first came to Southern, you know, I enjoyed being in college.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit social. I enjoyed the social life. I enjoyed the organizations.
Right.
I was involved in a lot. I was involved in the yearbook staff, the Methodist Club. I was a commander of the first women's drill team. And I enjoyed being, I am one of the founding members and president of Gamma Sigma Sigma's National Service Sorority.
Okay.
And so I enjoyed being involved while at Southern. And so that was during my first year. But you know, it's interesting, during my second year, I organized a little protest against Parker Hall and the bad food.
Ah.
And I remember that. I didn't mention that when I was at my speech, but
60 years later, kids still complain about the dining hall.
I know, all over, everywhere.
Yes.
Even my granddaughter complained about her school. But anyway, Parker Hall, because you know they gave LSU, we always say gave LSU the best of the food and gave us what was left. And so I organized, well, about 15 of us went into Parker Hall and ordered our food and then left it on the table. And so they got mad with me. And they said, "You're gonna get put out of school." I said, "No, I'm not." So that was my first little
Protest away from Monroe.
protest away from Monroe, and against something that we all detested because the food was terrible.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had a good year at Southern my first year, and my sophomore year was
But if you would, though, I want you to speak to something there. Why do you think people are afraid to stand up when they detest, or there's truly a systematic, or, you know?
You know what I found out, and this is just my personal observation.
Right.
You have to have a certain spirit to stand up. And I always say to my students, you don't need anybody but yourself. You don't need people to follow you. Just do what you feel is right. A lot of people don't have that fire in their belly. You know, you have to be a little bit different. I did it in high school only because I never sat on the back of the bus in my hometown. I stood up in the middle of the bus, and the bus driver, because he knew me, he would say, "Won't you go sit down? Just sit down." And I would sit in the middle, and he wouldn't say nothing, because I would stand up the whole time. You know, I just protested some things, young, and it's still with me. I mean, I never forget this. This happened a year ago. My husband was in the hospital. He was in the hospital for quite a while, so I stayed with him. And he had a private room because he had he needed a private room for his condition. And so I went home, I stayed with him most of the time. I went home just one evening to pack this is about a year and a half ago, to pack up my stuff to go, because I was teaching at Bowie State.
Okay.
And I was going to bring my stuff to the hospital, and from there I'm going to Bowie State. So I came home and got all my stuff together, and I said, I'm going to take a nap, and I'm going to go back early in the morning. So he called me like probably 5:45 in the morning. And he said, "Baby," he said, "they moved me from the room." I said, "What do you mean they moved you from your room, your private room? This is a big hospital in Washington,
Right.
Washington Hospital Center." I said, "What do you mean they moved you?" He said, "They moved me in with a man." I said, "They should have moved you from your private room." He said, "But they did." I said, "What room were you in?" He told me. I was so mad. I was home. I went to my computer and turned my computer on, and I found who was the president of this hospital. It was about 6:15 in the morning, 6:30. I got on the computer and I wrote this man a letter.
Yeah, go to the top, like your dad taught you.
My dad taught me. I found this man's name. His email was there, and I know he wasn't in the office, but I emailed him. And I said, "I know this is not the policy of your hospital to move a man who is sick from a private room into a room with somebody who has other issues."
Right.
I said, "I'm sure it wasn't done because he's black. But I want to know why was it done."
Right.
It's an insult to me and it's an insult to him. I said, "I know people in Washington, D.C. I know the people who's my dear friend who helped you get money for this hospital." And I was.
Right.
This councilman was my dear friend. And I said, I know he got money for this hospital to help improve your hospital. And you treat my husband like this. And so I left home. And so I was like, let me go to this hospital. I went straight to the hospital. Before I got in the door of the hospital, my cell phone rang. And he said, Dr. Harris, I forgot his name. This is Mr. whoever he is.
Right.
He said, and your husband is being moved back to a private room. When I got there, the nurses were so mad with me. They didn't speak and they were rushing around. I said, are you looking for your husband? I said, you know I'm looking for my husband. And so I went to where he said, I'm being moved from this room to the private room. I went there and looked at that room that he was in. I said, this is horrible. They had packed up all this stuff, and I went with him to his new room. I said, this is what you got to fight every step of the way. Being black, there's no relaxation on how people treat you. There's no relaxation on anything. And so, but you have to have the fire in your belly to fight. A lot of people don't have it. They accept things.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest fight I have all the time is Macy's downtown. I don't put on my own shoes. I'm 78. I don't try on any shoes on my own feet.
Right.
I see people that scurrying around. I said, you make commission off of me. They pay you and then you get a commission on selling these shoes, and you gonna want me to put my own shoes on?
You're supposed to serve me.
I said, my daddy owned a shoe store. That was my job. It's putting shoes on people's feet. It's servicing them. And you think I'm gonna come in and put my own shoes on? No. And I was in there before I came here. I went to buy a pair of shoes, and the young lady said, oh, I don't do that. I said, well, you go somewhere else. And this young lady named Jada. I said, do you try shoes? She said, I'll help you. I said, if not come here, I'm gonna ask for you.
Yeah.
Because you're the person I want to ask for.
Well, you know,
and she put my shoes on, help me out. I said, because this is what service is. But when you go over to Nordstrom's, they put your shoes on. You don't even think about it.
Well, I think it's it's that whole training, a different level of service, and
it is.
You have to be willing to serve others.
Yes, right. And so we have to learn. Do not accept things. I don't care if it's a university. I don't care if it's a church, wherever it is. We have to stand up for what we believe. And so, I think the fire in your belly starts a little early.
Yeah.
Some people get it late, but I think the bulk of people get it early. Because, yeah.
You know, we're sitting downtown Baton Rouge right now. It's just a couple blocks over. Let's talk about that fire in your belly at the Kress 5 and Dime, and how did that start?
Well, you know, I guess maybe you didn't, but I grew up with this table in the corner, this tall table in the corner and a curtain where black people had to go and eat.
Pay full price and you had to eat behind the curtain.
You eat behind the curtain because you couldn't sit at the counter. And we decided we were going to go down to Kress. We didn't know where we were going at first till we got there because they wouldn't tell us. We told them we didn't want to know. Just take us to where we have to do what we need to do. Okay?
Wow.
And so that's why it was such a surprise to everybody because it wasn't talked about much. Okay? So we went down to...
Well, how did the small group come together, though? Talk about that.
Marvin Robinson, who's the president of our class, and I guess he knew Major Johns. I never knew the relationship. But Marvin decided he's going to call together student leaders. And I don't know, I guess I was a student leader. That's why I was called in the group.
So what determines a leader? I mean, let's talk about that just briefly. Because a lot of times people say, hey, I wasn't born to lead. I'm not a leader.
Well, that's true. Some people are not leaders.
Okay.
Some people are not born to lead. I find, even in my life now, that most people want to follow. I'm trying to build a leader right now to take over what I do. And they want to follow. And some of them who want to lead don't know how to cross the T and dot the I.
Yeah.
Because a leader has to be multi-focused. You have to be able to move on different fronts to make things happen. Students don't want to be leaders. They want to follow. So when I looked last night at the event and saw those leaders standing up, I was pleased.
Yes.
Because we're building leaders. Young people are going to lead, and that's what you need.
Right.
Because who's going to carry on? And who's going to tell our story but us? You know, it's so, I was just, early, I guess I was trained to be a leader.
Yeah.
Your
dad showed you a lot.
My dad showed me a lot.
He showed you a lot. He taught you a lot.
My mother wasn't much of a leader, but she was very determined in what she wanted to happen. But my daddy was a leader. And so my brother didn't take the bug much.
Right.
He wasn't a leader, and my sister wasn't really a leader. But I was my daddy's girl. I followed him everywhere, so that made sense. But at Southern, we were selected because of the activities we were involved in. And I was commander of the girls' drill team. So, that meant that I had like about 40 women that I led all the time and gave directions. And so that was the thing that really, I guess, described me as a leader. So they picked the leaders that they wanted to pick. And I guess the leaders had something else going, and I don't know what that was. Mm-hmm. But we all came together, we all gelled.
Yeah.
And that was good.
Well, it was behind a common cause. Oftentimes people forget about, why am I here?
Yeah, but walking into Kress, we all had money to be customers, but walking in there, we all were very nervous.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know what was going to happen. So we walked in and walked around and looked for stuff and bought some. I think I bought some makeup that was too white for my face. So, but I never did use it, but I bought it, whatever I bought. And so we walked around there and bought stuff and milled around, and then we decided to go sit down with our packages. And the women behind, who were waitresses, they flew. They ran because they knew something was going to happen. They really ran. And so we sat down and we ordered what we wanted to order. A couple of waitresses came back out. We ordered, and they said, you can pay for it here, but you have to go over in the corner. Yeah, but we're not going to the corner, we're going to sit here and eat. And the white folks who were sitting there jumped up and left. And this one man I sat behind sat there, and I didn't know he was a manager. That's why he stayed.
Right.
Everybody else left. And he said, you ought to follow the instructions of what they say to you. I said, well, nobody's back here now. They all gone. They were in the back room, in the kitchen. Nobody give instructions. He didn't want to give instructions. He wanted them to say.
Right.
See, and they flew. They took the order and flew. And so we said, we're going to sit here and eat. So the order was never brought out. Because I don't know what he said to them, but he called the police.
Right.
He had somebody to call him, I think. I didn't remember him having, then there were no cell phones sitting there then in the 60s, so he didn't call nobody from where he was sitting. So I think he told somebody. We were nervous, so we weren't paying attention.
Right, you wanted all the details there.
We weren't looking at the details, we were just saying, what's going to happen next, So he told somebody, I'm sure, to call the police. Right. Because he told us that the police was going to come. And they came, and, they were big big men, all weighted down with their equipment. Yes. And all of that. You could see the handcuffs and the guns and the billy clubs, but, once we saw that, we were just no good. We were nervous, of course. And so they said that you have to get up and go. They told us you have to get up and go in the corner and eat, or you're going to be taken to jail. And we didn't leave. And, they could have been more brutal.
Well, talk about that moment right there, because I've heard 4 or 5 times while you were in that building, you've been told, here's what you're supposed to do, but that fire in your belly kept saying, I'm here for another reason.
Right. To test these unequal laws.
Yeah. And
to test how you're treating us as Black Americans. And if white people can sit and eat, why can't we? And that really came from, let me say this, my junior year, coming home from basketball practice in Monroe and stopping by the F.W. Woolsworth's 5 and Dime and drinking out of white water fountain. I always drink out the white water fountain. And the security guard said, girl, that's not your fountain. That's your fountain over there. And I always said, the water looks the same to me. And he said, you have to get out of the store. Maybe. So one day somebody saw the police putting me out the building, and they called my dad and said, Janette is being thrown out of F.W. Woolsworth downtown. I don't know why, but you need to check on it. And my daddy came downtown and he said to me, have you lost your mind? I said, what? He said, I'm just drinking out of a white water fountain. He said, you shouldn't drink water at all. Go home and drink water. Because you're going to jail. They're going to throw you out or going to beat you up. Yeah. But I was just believe I should test the laws because they were so unfair to us, And so I guess that was the white people who lived behind me on I faced Jackson Street, which is a highway.
Okay, familiar with Monroe.
And then there was some white people who moved in behind us,
Okay.
facing the other street. And I met them, and they were so dumb. They didn't know anything. And I used to say to my mother, they're some dumb children. They don't know nothing. And they're white. They're supposed to be smart. And she said, no, they ain't supposed to be smart. They're supposed to be just who they are. And you're supposed to be just who you are.
Wow.
You know? And I realized that. And they used to play with us when they were little. And this was when we were young. But when they got older, they didn't. That was it. They separated.
It's taught.
It was taught. When they got older, and I told them, you can't pull our mulberries and blueberries off our strawberries and blueberries off our bush. Get away from our fence, because you don't want to associate with us. So don't be pulling our fruit. Yeah, and so they didn't want to associate with us. I distinctly remember the guy who was a friend of my brother's. As he got older, he didn't want to talk to my brother. He didn't want to associate, but they taught that.
No, it is definitely taught. You know, when you talked about those decisions going back to that Kress building.
Yeah.
And as you reflect back, what were your thoughts as you were put in that paddy wagon?
My thought was that I'm going to be beat up in jail. That's what I thought. I said, Lord, what are they going to do to me when I get to jail?
Yeah.
And so when I got to jail, they fingerprinted me and ID'd me and all of that. Let me direct you to your cell. You know, that became the reality. To go in that cell and lock that door. That was the reality.
It was real.
That was real.
And what was the makeup, male versus female, out of the 6 of you guys?
Just 2 ladies.
2 ladies and 4 guys.
And myself, a senior, and the other were 4 guys.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were in a cell where we could talk to them across the way, out the window. And they said, are you okay over there? And we said, yeah, we okay. What about you? They said, yeah, we okay. And we talked back and forth. It made us feel a little bit more relaxed, although we both were in jail. But the women were pretty tough. I mean, they were real criminals.
Right.
And they told us, you know, they had stabbed somebody, they had shot somebody. They were real criminals. They said, we ain't going to bother you. But who knows what they're going to do? You know, it was about, I think it was 2 of us and maybe 3 of them in jail.
You know, but what's interesting is you were there with, I've heard you tell the story of a lady that stabbed a boyfriend, I think, and or a husband, and one that shot, you know, a husband or boyfriend.
Right.
But they were willing to do that, but unwilling to stand up for injustice. Think of that dichotomy.
Yes.
You're in the same cell.
In the same cell, right. Yeah. And
but you were killing something, though. You were killing an idea.
You killed an idea, yeah. But you see, the system has a way of brainwashing you. The system has a way of making you feel what they want you to feel.
Yeah.
Because they have a way of doing it so often, it becomes a way of life. Remember that.
Conditioning.
The way we were treated in Monroe became a condition.
Yeah.
It became a condition. I went back to speak to my high school reunion several years ago, and I talked about this. They did not know that. Here I am going to school with the same people. And for some reason, they knew something had happened, but they really didn't know what. That's unusual.
Yeah.
But you conditioned. They probably just say Janette Harris is a bad girl, so don't associate with her.
Got kicked out of Southern.
Yeah, so don't associate with her. She ain't going nowhere. She got kicked out of college.
Well, let's talk about that now. You in jail, governor intervenes. You know, as it said, that people look at the president. He's in a tough situation. I'm just looking at time here.
I'm good.
And so, a tough situation. You're expelled from Southern University. All the students are expelled.
Right.
And the time in 1960, no other school would really touch you. Not just, people say couldn't go anywhere in the state, but a lot of the schools in the country would not touch you.
Let me tell you something. I say that, and I didn't want to elaborate. There was one man, James Peters, who was a graduate of Southern, who was at the University of Connecticut, I think. He died a couple of years ago. I think
he was an Alpha.
He was an Alpha.
Yes,
that's right.
He was one of the founding members of the Alpha chapter.
Yeah, that's right. He and my mother were close friends.
Hartford, Connecticut.
Because he went to school in Monroe.
Okay.
And he and my mother became close friends. And so he called my mother and said, I just saw Janet going to jail, and she's going to be kicked out of Southern. I'll find a scholarship at the University of Connecticut. I'll bring her up here. And my mother said, oh no, James. She says, too many white people at the University of Connecticut. They'll kill her, because she ain't gonna keep her mouth closed. No, 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 no. No. He said, I'll talk to he hadn't talked to the people then.
Right.
But he just
knew what would.
He wanted to bring me up there himself, but the president didn't say that he would accept us, or none of that. That's what he wanted to do. And he wanted to tell my mother, I think I can get her a scholarship, I think I can bring her up here and put her in school. And my mother said, no, James, that ain't gonna work. No. She can't come up there.
Yeah.
Not to Connecticut. And Charles Wesley was the only person who said, I will take all of them. He didn't only take us from Southern, he took people from Arkansas, he took people from Tennessee, those students who sat in, he took about 3 different schools and brought the students there.
You know,
good alpha man.
I was about to say, you're a historian, he's the author of our history book as an alpha.
And I'm his biographer.
Wow.
Charles Wesley's biographer.
Yes.
I've written a small book on him.
I get chills as I think about this as an alpha.
I worked with him.
Talk about him as the testament of a man to be willing to stand up and say, I accept, I'm going to accept these students, because normally if you're expelled from a school,
that's right,
you have to either start over or
also,
the records don't transfer.
That's right. Charles Wesley took all of us in. He made everything available to us on campus. He even said to me one morning, he said, do you have any money? I said, not much. He gave me $10 every Friday. He told the bursar to give her $10 every Friday so she'll have some money to buy things with. That was unheard of. And all the students that heard of that afterwards, they said, he ain't never gave us no money. I don't understand. I said, but you came there on your own. I was thrown out of Louisiana, came to Ohio. I knew nothing about Ohio.
Right.
Absolutely nothing. I went there on a train. By myself, of course.
Yes.
I knew nothing about Ohio. So I was in a foreign land, with all new people. But he would talk to me every now and then. He had me to come to his office, wonder how I was doing, how I was going on. And then when he retired, I graduated, came to Washington, D.C. He retired after that. And he lived at a house in Washington because he worked at Howard early on years. So he moved back to Washington, D.C. And he was in charge of Carter G. Woods's organization, the Association for the Study of Afro-American. It was Negro Life and History then.
Okay.
He became the executive director, and he ran that organization. And I saw him in a grocery store one day, and he said, oh my God, you in Washington? I said, yes, sir. He said, what are you doing? I was teaching elementary school.
Okay.
Had a good job teaching elementary school, because I had left the Peace Corps then because they had made me mad. They didn't give me a job, so I was teaching elementary school then. And he said to me, you got a full-time job? I said, yes. He said, I got a Ford Foundation grant. Why don't you come work with me? He said, but it's not permanent. I said, really? He said, it's not a lot of money. He said, think about it. I'd like you to come work with me. So I came home and told my husband, I said, I saw Dr. Wesley today. He said, where? I said, I saw him I forgot what store, what grocery store. And I said, he offered me a job to come work with him at Carter G. Woods's organization, but it's not permanent, but it's a Ford Foundation grant. My husband said, but you got a full-time job teaching, and you're making pretty good money. You're permanent teacher in D.C. public schools. I said, yeah, but that would be interesting, wouldn't it? He said, yeah, it'd be interesting. He said, not paying you much money. I said, no, he said, it's not a lot. He said, that's your decision. You make that decision. He said, that's a big decision, Janet. And I thought about it. I said, I think I'm going to work for him.
Yeah.
And I quit my teaching job. My friends thought I was crazy. They said, girl, you got a teaching job, you got benefits, you go and work for a man with a grant, and you don't know how much money you're going to get, it ain't going to be much. He said, you're crazy. I said, you know what? This man took me in when nobody else would. And he gave me an education. And it's all about service and giving back. And he said he don't have nobody working with him. He's in that job and he ain't got no help. I'm going to go work for him. And I quit my teaching job. They thought I was crazy. And went to work for Charles Wesley for some meager salary. And This is Charles West, this desk over here, and this is mine, and we face each other in that office.
But just imagine what you learned during that time
And
frame.
I learned everything about Alpha Phi Alpha, okay? I learned all the...
You said you know my history better than I do.
I learned how they made deals and how they made things happen. I learned about Alpha Phi Alpha, that's for sure. And I sat facing him at his desk. His desk is mine here. I became his assistant. And he taught me how to be associate editor of one of Woodson's books called the Negro History Bulletin. I was associate editor, and I got that title, and he showed me how to write, how to edit, book reviews, and all of that. And then one day he said, you know, you got a lot of smarts. He said, why don't you go back to college? I said, go back to school? I got a husband, 2 children. I said, my husband's thinking about going back to school to get a PhD.
Yeah.
He said, why don't you go back? I said, I got 2 children. I don't know about it. I don't have no money. He said, go back to school to get a PhD in history. I said, I got a degree in psychology. He said, you ain't gonna do nothing but that. Go get a degree in history. And you learn about this history that you're dealing with right now.
Right.
This is the ultimate place of history right now. I said, I don't know. That was a big decision. So he said, I don't want no PhD. He said, well, go get a master's first. I said, okay, maybe so. He called Howard. I told Howard he wanted me to come work on a master's. And Howard said, she don't have no background in history. She got a degree in psychology. Dr. Weston said she got a background in history from being here where I am. I later years learned that they were jealous of Wesley.
Wow.
You know, they were jealous that they wasn't plucked out to be in doing these things because he was revered at Howard. He had been a dean and all of that, okay? Yeah. And so, who is she to come in and get all this wealth of knowledge, you know? So I went to get my master's, and then when he recommended me for a PhD, they said, I'm not sure she's qualified to have a PhD. Charles Wesley said, yes, she's qualified to get a PhD, and I will vouch for her. So and I didn't want a PhD. I said, Dr. Wesley, I don't want a PhD. I really don't. That's too much schooling for me.
But now you got doctor in front of your name.
And so he really forced me into going to get a PhD. I didn't want a PhD.
Well, you know, there's 2 lessons in that. Number one is that lesson of doing what others think is crazy, taking that leap of faith. You know, when you're in that good job, as people often tell you,
yeah.
You took that leap of faith. And then number 2, having a mentor that pushed the baby out of you.
Yes, he did. And not only that, when I got to the end of my PhD, he said to me, what are you going to do your dissertation on? I said, I don't know. He said, you can do it on me. He said, I'll turn all my papers over to you. Well, at that time, Howard would not allow you to do a PhD on somebody living.
Okay.
And Howard said no. The history department said no. My professor said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And the head of the department, Lorraine Williams, Dr. Lorraine A. Williams, I told her what had happened. That my advisor said, no, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it on somebody living. And she said, oh, yes, you can. She said, that's old thinking. Yeah, you can.
Wow.
You can do it on Charles Wesley. And she told, and Rayford Logan was one of my professors, Dr. Rayford Logan. And Dr. Logan said, Dr. Williams told Dr. Logan, said, she's going to do a dissertation on Charles Wesley. Dr. Logan said, that's all right. Some of the other professors said, no. Logan said, yeah. Logan was my professor at Howard.
Okay.
And Dr. Logan did a book, an encyclopedia book. Out of all the students he had, he selected only 2 of us to write on somebody and put it in that book. And I was one of the persons that he chose. When I first came a student with Dr. Logan, who you know,
right,
as a big alpha.
Yes.
I had a big afro, and I wore dashiki, okay? And Dr. Logan told me I couldn't use the word black in his class because my word was black. I didn't use Negro. He said, Miss Harris, you can't use the term black. You have to use Negro. I said, Dr. Logan, I don't like Negro, the word Negro. I said, white people made that up for us. He said, well, you can't use it in my class. Every time I use it, he said, did you say Negro? And I said, yes, sir. But I didn't say Negro. And he used to get mad with me, but we became the best of friends.
Wow.
The best of friends. And so,
From professor to peers.
yeah. So, and one professor who I had said, "I don't see why you doing a dissertation on Charles Wesley. I'm researching Charles Wesley. I want to write a book on Charles Wesley." So she was upset.
Right.
So I went through those changes, having worked at that association. And now they're doing the Woodson House into a museum.
Okay.
And I'm the only living person who worked in the house.
Wow.
And so I'm working with the Park Service and putting things in the Woodson House. Artifacts that I have, books and those kind of things. So it's interesting how life turned around.
And I want you to touch on one thing. I know we're getting to the end of our time here. You mentioned something when you spoke, and we talked on the phrase "always go to the top." Talk about with the Peace Corps when
Yes.
you called the White House on
Yes.
on discrimination.
Yeah.
And what year was that?
That was in probably 62,
Okay.
because I was married. Probably 62, I was at the Peace Corps. And, well, to get to the Peace Corps, the federal government lists all these jobs that are available every day on this board downtown.
So there were no internet back then, guys.
No, so I used to
you
go,
listening to the
no
music.
internet. So I had to go down there and see what was available and what they were looking for.
Yeah.
I had been going down there for weeks, and I didn't see nothing. I found things, but they said no, they were filled, or no, you're not qualified.
Right.
Through all of that, and a lot of times they didn't tell me why I wasn't qualified. But on this federal government application, you always have to tell why you were jailed.
Okay.
Have you ever been jailed? That was on that application. You have to explain why you were jailed. And a lot of people use that against us. Okay? And so the Peace Corps had an announcement that they wanted, I think it was like 10 or 15 persons with a degree in psychology.
Okay.
And I had a psychology degree, so that just lit me up. I ran down to the Peace Corps, and this was early in the morning, like 9:15 when I got down there, because it wasn't far from the Peace Corps where
Right.
the building was. And I sat there, I was the only person there, and this man called me up, and I filled out the application. He looked at it, he said, all the jobs are filled. I said, but nobody's here but me. It's early in the morning, all these jobs couldn't be filled. He said, I told you, gal. That's what he said. All these jobs are filled. We have no jobs. They all filled. I'm sorry. And he went on to the back. Got up, went to the back, came back out and sat, so I left. I was so mad. Ooh, I rode that bus all the way home. I called that man everything I could think of. I was so mad. And I got to, because I lived with my cousin in Southeast then. So I was downtown Northwest.
Okay.
So that was quite a ride.
Right. You had time to think about it.
That was a 25-minute ride. I had a whole lot of time to think about it. So my cousin who worked for the federal government, he got home, he said, well, how did your day go, Jan? I said, it was terrible. I said, you know, the Peace Corps had jobs for a person with my degree. And I went down there, I got down there early in the morning, and they said the jobs were all filled. And I didn't get the job. He said, it happens. I said, I'm sure they looked at that section that says when you ever jailed, and they used that against me. But they didn't give me that job. He said, well, you can go back out tomorrow. I said, well, I called the president. He said, what president? I said, I called John F. Kennedy. He said, no, you didn't. He said, you lost your mind. I said, no, I called. And I asked him what was going on. I said, they asked me what was my problem, and I told them. What would you tell them? I said, I told them everything. I told them that they discriminated against me because of my race. I said my civil rights had been violated. I said they used my being in jail against me. I told him everything. He said, that's just a waste of time. You don't do that. I said, my daddy told me to go to the top, but not this top. He said, when your daddy told you to go to the top, he means your employer. Go talk to your employer. I said, I don't have no employer. I'm looking for an employer. He said, you have lost your mind. So he laughed at me. Oh, okay. He laughed at me. So what happened is that I said, I went to bed. He told his wife when she got home, they laughed at me. We had dinner. He said, that's a good experience in Washington, D.C. I said, yeah, it was. The next day, I believe it was the next day, that I got a call from Robert Kennedy's office saying they understand that I had, because the White House told me, they called me, no, it wasn't the next day, because the White House called me the next day and said that the president was out of the country.
Okay. Wow.
But somebody will get back to me. And it was that next day, the second day afterwards, that Robert Kennedy's office called. because
Wow.
they referred it to him. And they said, we call you from the Attorney General's office, Robert F. Kennedy. I couldn't believe it. They said, we want to know, can you come down and meet with the Attorney General tomorrow? I said, yes, I can. When my cousin came, I called my cousin at work. I said, you think I'm being foolish? I said, let me tell you. I said, Robert Kennedy, he said, don't, you lying. He said, did Robert Kennedy's office didn't call you? I said, yes, he did. And I'm going down tomorrow. They couldn't wait to get home to talk to me, to find out what I did, what they said, what did I say. They wanted to know play by play. And I told them. They said, that's unusual, Janette.
Yeah.
He said, you'll get a job now.
Well, you know, interesting though, it may not have been unusual because how many people will go to the top?
Right. Yes. How many people think to even call the president?
Right.
Yes. Because I told
What you did was unusual.
Yes.
So when you do unusual things, you get unusual results.
That's true. That's true. That's true. And I believe in going to the top. You have to. You have to let people know that you have something happen. Let me tell you something. It's just on tape. But in this hotel,
Yes.
I'm going to call the manager when I finish with you. Because not only did they not bring extra roll of toilet paper to my room, but I curled my hair yesterday and wiped the curlers on the towel. And when I got in there this morning, that same towel was there with the curlers on.
With the curl marks, I mean,
They're cutting corners. They are cutting corners.
And the top wants to know that, or should want to know that.
They should want to do that.
If they care.
In fact, I wanted to go and tell them to send some toilet paper up to my room where my husband is. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But anyway.
And so you wind up getting the job because you went to the top.
I went to the top, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting in that years later, I had children, and my children went to school with Robert Kennedy's children.
Wow.
And my son became friends with Max Kennedy. And Max came over to our house and spent the night with my son, and my son would go over and spend the night in his house. And one day I was over there sitting around the pool with Mrs. Robert Kennedy.
Uh-huh.
And my son was in the water playing with Max, and I told her the story. And you know, this is one thing I failed to do. She said to me, Rhoda, write that up, Miss Harris, and send it to me. Because we're going to have a library one day.
Yeah.
And you know, that library exists, and they did a movie on him, and I didn't do it at all. And that was something that should have been in there. They probably would have put it in there.
Right, because it speaks to the testament of the person.
The person, yes. And I didn't. I said, and I saw Max at a convention. He hugged me and we laughed, and because we were really close then.
Yeah.
And I told her the story, and she said, "That is wonderful. I never knew that, Miss Harris. I never knew that." She said.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as we get ready to wrap up, tell us a little bit about where you are presently. We talked a lot about the 60s and into the 70s, but talk about today and what would you challenge any person that happens to see this video going forward?
You know what I'd like to say to young people? I want you to take the attitude that you're special and that you are on this earth to provide some service and to help people. And any way you see that you can help them, don't wait for somebody else. Do it yourself. Anytime you see a wrong, challenge the wrong. Okay? That should be your mantra. You cannot let things go when you know they're wrong. And remember, you'll always be by yourself in doing this. There will not be a band of angels behind you. Okay? So you have to be tough-skinned.
Yeah.
And you have to be committed, because as you move forward and do this, you bring other people will see you. You set the example, and other people follow. And look at things more carefully than you've looked. You know, that's what I say. And I tell, and my granddaughter, I tell her that. You know, you're special. Don't let anybody think that you're anything else but special.
Wow.
You know.
And you know, and that means a lot. So as you know, I, first of all, I want to appreciate you for getting up early on this Sunday morning after a late night. You know, had a chance for those that are listening to hear Dr. Harris as she spoke to Southern at their lifetime breakfast for the alumni conference. But and see the students, I mean, the people here at the hotel are respecting a young man just say good morning to you as he was going in. But the other side of it is last night you were honored by your peers and by the future generation. How did that feel for the alumni to give you a Lifetime Achievement Award?
That felt so special.
And you got the only standing ovation now.
I'm telling you, I could not believe that. I wasn't even looking at the crowd because I was shaking hands and getting the award.
Yes.
And I told him I really was honored to get that award, you know, because it made me feel that I did make a contribution. You know, and that's important. That you know, you always hear people say, "What's between the dash?"
Yeah.
In your life.
How full is your dash?
How full is your dash? And I felt at that I felt last night that my dash was pretty good. And when I turned around and saw everybody standing, I got the only standing ovation. I could not believe it.
Yes.
I had to hold back my emotions. I really did, because that was special.
Yeah.
That was special. And I mean, the whole weekend I have been here, I've been taking pictures and signing autographs. And last night after that, they were taking pictures until I left.
As they would say, that's the cherry on top of that ice cream.
That's the cherry on top of the ice cream. I said, oh, I wish my children could have seen that.
Yeah.
You know, I think they were, because nobody taped anything. We just have to tell them.
Well, some of that was video, so you could ask for that video.
Last night.
Yes, they had a videographer there.
Yes, they should. Yeah.
So that was there.
So I can call Carlton or Derek and ask them for the video, a copy of the video.
And but no, thanks a lot for this interview, conversation.
This is
we could go on because there's some things I want to talk to you. I know you got tons of more.
Ask me one more question.
One more question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, you know, when you look at it, is as you move forward, what's next for you? I mean, you're in the, I won't say the twilight. You look past.
You're
in the twilight. You're still a young lady at heart, I know.
I'm in the twilight. Yeah. What's next? I don't know. Let me say this. In Washington, D.C., I started a group called the Washington, D.C. Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Where every year we recognize 11 outstanding people in D.C. who have made tremendous contributions to the city in so many ways. And this is our 18th year.
Wow.
And I feel that it's time for me to, I've been trying to train people to take over, but people don't want to step up to the plate. They said, we can't do what you do. You don't have to do what I did. Do what you can do. I'll be there to help you, okay? And so the mayor has been so responsive to our event system. Since she became mayor, she has not missed an event. And so she's made it possible for us now to do stars for each year, and we put the names of each of the honorees in.
Okay.
So that's what I'm working on now. So that's the last project I'm going to work on. And the other is I'm writing a book.
That's not going to be the last project. You said that's the next project. Don't say last, because as long as you're here, you're going to be working. I can see it now.
I'm writing my story.
Okay.
I'm doing that. And my husband and I together are writing our love story.
Oh, man.
Because we have 56 and a half years of wonderful, wonderful marriage.
You know, I saw a picture as I was reresearching. I saw that picture of you guys in that big chair in Atlantis.
Yes.
Y'all hugged up on each other. I saw that.
Right. You saw that, yes. Yes. And I hope people on the internet get a chance to see this.
Yeah.
To get a chance to hear this, you know. It might, sometimes things will help others move up to the top. You know, or to do things.
Oftentimes I say it's the cumulative effect that causes us to boil over.
Right.
It's the things that have been poured into us that allows us to cause us to move. We don't know when it's going to happen sometimes.
We don't know. When I was teaching these last years at Bowie State, I gave my students different things that happened to me so they can get a feel. I said to them, I told them about the shoes. I said, let me tell you something else. When you go into Subway, I don't care where you go into, where they fix your food.
Yes.
And you see those gloves a wrinkle, you kindly ask the guy to change the gloves. Yeah. I do it all the time. I say, you mind changing the gloves? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but they change them. Because he's wiping the counter, he's going into the containers, he's moving pots over here and there, and then he's picking up your lettuce and your tomatoes and putting it on your sandwich.
Right, he's transferred all that.
Do you understand he's transferring germs to your food? My husband used to get mad with me when I did it until he saw somebody doing his, and then he decided that he wasn't going to get mad with me anymore.
But what I get from that as an entrepreneur and as a person is you're stressing the details. You know, the challenge you gave me on my book. I accept that as
Yes, you do.
yes, I need to step to another level and embrace those details.
Yes, but you can't let things go because people treat us like we don't exist. And I took my granddaughter to the African American Museum. And we were standing there reading. She was standing in front of me, and we were reading what had happened to blacks during slavery. I was explaining it to her.
Mm-hmm.
And this white gentleman, who had to be about 6 feet, walked in front of us. We had some space between us and where we were reading.
Right.
And he walked in front of us like we didn't exist.
Wow.
And I touched him on the shoulder. And I said, sir, do you see us standing here reading this? And you're gonna walk in front of us? I said, no, you can't do that. You cannot walk in front of us. Please go behind us. And my granddaughter looked at me and she said, Nana, that was a big man you told that to. I said, it doesn't matter how big he is, baby.
Right is right.
You don't, right is right, and you don't let people he act as if we didn't exist.
Yeah.
I said, no, he can't do that to us. She was shocked, but she won't ever forget it, though.
She'll never forget that.
She'll
And there'll
never
be a
forget
time
that.
in her life, I believe,
Yes.
where she'll say, my Nana
That's right.
stood up to this 6-foot man
That's right.
of a simple right. Now it's time for me to stand
Yeah.
up.
And this was just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And so she said to me, Nana, you're not a racist, are you? I said, no. But I don't allow people to mistreat me, black nor white. I don't allow blacks to mistreat me. I don't allow whites to mistreat me.
You made me think of a phrase there. You're not a racist, but I'm a rightist.
I'm a rightist. I like that.
I'm about right.
I'm gonna use that, a rightist.
Please use that. I'm writing that down. God just gave me that.
Yes.
You are a rightist.
Yes.
And so with that said, Dr. Harris, I definitely appreciate your time. And
Yes.
next time I'm in DC, I'm going to call ahead of time and schedule some time to
Do
really
that. Yes.
just come and see what you do up there. I mean, and
Okay,
learn
that'd
more
be
about
good.
the Hall of Fame. And
So now, where will you put this?
well, one, it'll be on my YouTube channel, but we're going to share it immediately this week on Facebook, and
good.
I'm going to share it as really my experience at the alumni
At the
conference.
alumni, yes, your experience.
Because
it was quite a weekend, wasn't it?
it was. I knew your name, but until I sat down that Saturday morning at breakfast, I was, working, selling merchandise for my store, because I love doing it, because I meet great people like
Yeah,
you when I
right,
do that.
right.
And that's how that book was born, Southern Greats.
Right.
As I've met a lot of people when I'm selling T-shirts.
Yeah, of course.
But just to hear the story, I'd heard part of it from one of your homeboys, James Fremont, Dr. James Fremont, who's passed away.
Yes.
But because he said he was around you guys, and it came down to watch you guys to document. He was downtown when you guys got hauled away,
Okay.
and he was afraid he was going to get expelled. And he said he remembered going back. He told me about they got sent home. All the students
Yeah.
got sent home. So I knew of the story, but I didn't know the details. But it just,
And a lot of the faculty resigned.
yeah,
Because two of the faculty, the Swanigans, Ethel and Howard Swanigan, who worked on campus, they resigned and left. And they moved to Wisconsin, I think. And then from there they came to Central State and worked. And I saw them, I reconnected with them. So I called them my mom and pop. Because I reconnected with them because they stood up for us when we were at Southern.
well, once again, it's about right. I heard one phrase someone said to me, I would agree with you, but we'll both be wrong.
Yeah.
And
That's interesting.
that is oftentimes we don't look at it that way.
Right.
And so it definitely, sitting here with a person who's a righteous. I'm not a racist. I'm not a racist. I'm a righteous.
I'm just righteous, yeah. But I also like the picture of us coming out of S.H. Kress with the police. Have you seen that one?
I've seen it once, but I got to go back and revisit that picture.
That is an excellent picture because it tells the story of them hauling us out, walking us out of S.H. Kress to the paddy wagon. And I really think about those days,
Now, what's ironic, and fast forward, the development of that building about 10 or 15 years ago was done by a black man.
Oh, okay.
It was an abandoned building
Right.
until about 10 years or 15 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And a guy, Brace Godfrey,
Oh, yeah, Brace Godfrey. I remember
he developed that building.
he did. And in fact, he was going to make a museum.
Yes.
He was going to do some kind of museum outside, but it ever get? I don't
It
think
didn't really get to I don't know what happened there.
I was so sorry that he passed because he really was in tune with Rachel Emanuel in doing that.
Okay.
Rachel Emanuel, let me say that she was a professor. She's retired from the law school, Dr. Rachel Emanuel. She put together all the documents. She interviewed all of us. She is a person you should talk to because she tells the whole story and she has everything.
Okay.
And we are really indebted to her for having preserved our history.
I will reach out to her. So with that said, it's been a pleasure and an honor. I mean that, and as I believe that I'm going on my journey later than I should have probably in doing some of this here.
You have my phone number?
No, I'm going to get you to write it, and
do
if
it
you
now.
would, I'm going to go ahead and just kill the interview here.